Forget what you think you know about Africa.
They fought for France, bled for France, and when they asked to be paid, they were killed. This is the untold story of the Thiaroye Massacre. Main story. They were called the Tirailleurs Senegalais, sons of African farmers, fishermen, and herders, African soldiers recruited by the French Empire across West Africa, trained to fight wars they didn't start. These men wore the uniform of a country that wasn't theirs, but they fought with courage, from the muddy trenches of Europe to the sun-scorched battlefields of Africa. They fought in World War I. They fought in World War II, and when Nazi Germany captured France in 1940, many of them were taken as prisoners of war. Years later, after Paris was liberated in 1944, France called again, and again they answered. In late November 1944, hundreds of these soldiers returned, not as heroes but as forgotten tools of war. They arrived in Senegal at a military camp in Thiaroye, near Dakar. They were told they would be processed, paid, and sent home. But weeks passed. Their uniforms were taken, their pay was delayed, their dignity stripped. Some hadn't seen their families in years. Many were sick. All were tired and frustrated. They waited. Days turned into weeks. Frustration grew. The same bravery they showed in war, they now used to demand fairness. Still, France refused to pay them. The soldiers demanded what was owed, not more, not less, just what was promised. No weapons, no violence, only voices and signs that said, "We want our pay." But to the French authorities, this peaceful protest was seen as a threat. On December 1st, 1944, before sunrise, the camp was surrounded. Many soldiers were still asleep, others unarmed. Then, gunfire erupted. French troops opened fire. Screams echoed across the camp, and when the shooting stopped, dozens were dead. Not in battle, but in betrayal. The truth was buried, literally. Mass graves were dug. Reports were changed, records edited, histories erased. France claimed only 35 men were killed. But survivors, historians, and even some former officers say the number was much higher, possibly over 300. Many were buried in unmarked graves. There was no trial, no justice, no apology. Senegal mourned. A mother stood beside an unmarked grave, holding a photo of her son. The truth survived through whispers, memories, and quiet tears. For decades it was hidden, documents sealed, families silenced. France wrote the story in pencil, then tried to erase it. They called the soldiers mutineers, troublemakers. And finally in 2024, French President Emmanuel Macron called it what it was, a massacre. In Senegal, the fallen are now being honored. Veterans grew old with pain still fresh, but now monuments rise, names carved into stone. In Dakar, school children ask, who were the Tirailleurs? And finally, history begins to answer. The Thiaroye Massacre was more than a crime. It was a deep wound, one Africa still carries. But it also sparked something powerful, the will to remember, the fight for justice. From Senegal to France, their names rise again, not just as victims, but as symbols of dignity, courage, and resistance. Never forgotten, never erased. And above all, this story reminds us, truth can be buried, but not destroyed. But the question remains, why did it take so long? This is their story. The story of how ordinary men dared to rise against a mighty empire. A story of pain, of pride, and of the unbreakable spirit of West Africa. Because if we forget them, we lose a part of ourselves. If this story moved you, hit the like button and drop a comment. African stories must be told. Subscribe to African History Animated for more powerful stories that history books left behind.